Australian Aviation Podcast, the official podcast of Australian Aviation, unpacking the latest insights, developments and issues impacting Australia's aviation sector.
Hello and welcome to the Australian Aviation Podcast, now presented in a snazzier jacket. I'm Jake Nelson, and we are in our second week of podcasts following the departure of Adam Thorne. And so we have our second rotating guest, Adam, because as last week's guest host David Hollingworth said in The Office later, it takes a village to replace an idiot. So our second entrant in what I was referring to as a game of planes, and what Adam would have referred to as a plane of thrones, but infuriatingly, Ben Foster, our partnerships manager, has come up with a much better name, Game of Thorns.
Ooh.
The second contestant in our Game of Thorns, also from Cyber Daily, Daniel Croft. Welcome to the show, Daniel.
Thank you very much. It's exciting to be here because I've heard many good things about the Australian Aviation Podcast. I don't bother watching it, but it's very, very good.
Who told you those good things? They're liars.
Mostly Adam, because he used to sit next to me.
Yeah, no, that tracks. That does check out. Well, we have a former Australian aviation journalist, actually, you are.
Yeah.
You worked for Australian Aviation for your first few months here at Momentum.
Yeah, when I started here at Momentum, I think the deal was always that I was going to go to cyber. But I started off doing aviation and space, even a bit back when World of Aviation was going.
We do not talk about World of Aviation.
I thought that would be the response. But yeah, writing for aviation was really, really cool. The coolest thing I got to do was when Bonza started up for the first time. I was on the inaugural flight. Wow, I had faith then.
Yeah. How was that? I mean, I never got to fly with Bonza, so I have been insanely jealous because that chance will never arise again, obviously. But how was Bonza as a passenger?
Actually, really good. Ignoring the fact that the airfares were going to be super low, you just consider it as like a rival to your Jetstar. Not in terms of obviously routes and stuff, but just in terms of comfort and being on the aircraft. It was fantastic. The seats, obviously, it had just been fitted out, but the seats were incredibly comfy. The food options were good. They weren't overly expensive. And I mean, I was only on the 2 flights there and back, and it was fantastic. I had no complaints at all. Obviously, it was like a, perfect example of a Bonza service, but it was very, very good.
More complaints about Channel 9 from what I hear.
Yeah, so we did have some delays with our food, but that was mostly because Channel 9, I think it was Channel 9, were walking up and down the aisle doing their little bits of filming. So, people were struggling to get to the bathroom and to get their food. So that took a while, but that was not the fault of Bonza. I've still got my Bonza budgie smugglers. I love the merch. And a Bonza pin, which I'm hoping to get you if I can find it.
I would love that Bonza pin. I would very much appreciate that. I am a pin collector, as others who, as people who have listened to this for a while might know. We've got, by the way, a new addition as well, again to our fleet. This episode, for those of you watching on YouTube, I am showing off this Qantas A380, once again picked up from the fine people at Hobbyco, made by I think PPC Holland. Cheaper actually than this Virgin Australia 737, which I found surprising because there is more plane. That said, this is the second one of these that I picked up. I had to return the first one because it was missing an engine.
That's problematic.
Yeah, I mean, look, an A380 can fly on 3 engines, but you still probably don't want it to.
No, I wouldn't get on the plane with 3 engines running, but
no.
If I land with 3 engines, that's the main point.
Yeah, look, it's as our guest, we had Michelle Huntington, Captain Michelle Huntington, formerly of Virgin Australia, on as a special guest for a podcast episode to be released sometime in the near future. So look at that. But as she said, any landing you walk away from is a good one. Anyone where they can use the plane again is a great one.
Yep.
So that's one. Now speaking of perhaps dubious Qantas planes. We had last week the mystery of this fantastic rendition of a Qantas plane. I'm showing this again on YouTube, so if those of you who are on audio, I'm sorry that you're missing out, but we have a lovely painting of a Qantas plane performed by my erstwhile co-host, painted by my erstwhile co-host, Adam Thorne. And we asked you last week what kind of plane you thought this was, because it was a mystery to us. We sort of debated back and forth with your colleague, David Hollingworth. Daniel, what kind of plane do you think this is? I gave you a bit of a crash course in identifying planes this morning.
It has been a long time since I've identified aircraft by eye, but based on the nose, it looks like an Airbus. I'd say it's not super pointy. It's got no exit doors whatsoever, which is incredibly alarming.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd say, in a poorly educated guess, it's like an A320, maybe. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. Well, Qantas does not fly A320s in its own right.
Okay, there we go.
Jetstar. So we've had a couple of guesses come in from our readers and our viewers online. We've had at Sky High Aviation 18 on YouTube has said they think this is a 737-800. I'll just bring the painting over here again to show you. And on Instagram, fabulous name. And we are honoured to have been graced by the presence of the potato god.
Oh, lovely.
The official potato god,
Wow.
6969.
Wow,
Potato
shout
god,
out.
Yeah, .official 6969 says, okay, A220. So assuming that this is an Airbus A220, not an unreasonable guess.
Okay.
But according to the man himself, Adam Thorne, we're all wrong. This is a 7879 Dreamliner.
Yes, I remember you saying that, and it sounds like he's the only one that's had that guess.
Yeah, so Adam Thorne has identified this as a Dreamliner. Now, I do have, for comparison's sake here, if I just prop it up on the Super Connie there, I do have, for comparison's sake, a picture of an actual Qantas 787 Dreamliner here on my tablet, as you can see here in Canberra. Comparing them side to side, you can see that the engines on the real Dreamliner are a lot bigger than these
And
ones.
symmetrical.
And symmetrical. And there's more windows on the Dreamliner because it is a long, wide-bodied plane. Not sure what those red bits at the end are. Possibly the lights. The tail is recognizable, but yeah, you can see the classic Boeing pointier nose there.
Yes.
As opposed to this one.
Overall, I would say not a bad effort, though.
Not a bad effort, but
Yeah.
look, Adam, I would tell you not to quit your day job, but you did, and that's why Daniel is here now.
Yep. Well, I mean, who knows? Is this what he's doing now?
It could be, he could be on his way to art school, and let's hope he's not rejected because historically people who've been rejected from art school, it doesn't turn out very well.
No, it doesn't. So, yeah, accept him, please.
Speaking of, we've got a few other comments on last week's video. Now, we spoke about the new coat of paint for Skytrans aeroplanes. They're all going to be painted in a neutral white. We discussed with your colleague David how that would potentially impact the business. Lyle Furphy on YouTube says, plain white airliners always look creepy to me. They make me wonder who they are or what they are hiding. Would that be appealing to you or unappealing? A plane painted entirely white?
I don't know. It kind of, to me, it's the same thing I've got with white cars. They become like an appliance to me. So it kind of takes the soul out of it. When you've got like a really iconic livery, like the kind of like historical ones that Qantas has that you occasionally see, I think that's really, really cool and really, really exciting. But to see something that's just plain white, yeah, I don't know about like untrustworthy, but definitely less soul. The hardest thing for someone with a lisp to say.
Yeah. I can think of some harder things.
Yeah, three S's in a row.
I will spare you from them. We also had an invitation for Adam to if he's ever out in Perth. I think he's going through Perth on his way back to the UK to visit. By Segurum to join him on a flight to Rottnest Island.
Wow.
Yeah, Segurum said, I'll fly to Rottnest Island. He said, that's an open invitation to anyone at Australian Aviation. So if I'm ever over in Perth and want to fly out to Rottnest Island, I'll be sure to get in touch with Segurum. Thank you.
Yeah, that's the Quokkas.
Yeah, that's the Quokkas.
Lovely.
And he says, also I was on a flight from Alice Springs to Perth and there was a dog in the hold that barked the entire flight back and I got to hear the owner tried to shush it. I felt bad for both of them. You would, wouldn't you?
What is typically kind of the take you've gotten from Australian aviation readers on pets on planes?
It's generally been in the negative. People have been saying, what about people with allergies? And I said, I've got a friend who's contemplating not flying with Virgin domestically again because his wife has severe allergic reaction, anaphylaxis to pet hair. There's people have been saying, what if it has an accident in mid-flight? You have to sit with the smell for the entire flight. What if it starts barking? And we talked a bit about the safety concerns. What if the plane is going down? You need to evacuate. How many people are going to leave their pet stuck under the seat to burn to death or go down in the ocean with the plane? So you're supposed to leave your bags behind. So it's a tricky issue. What's your take?
I don't know. It is a hard one. I've seen lots of clips, like I believe from the US, of people flying with pets, like not in cages, not in bags or anything, purely just cats on seats. And it's one of those things where I am a big animal person. I know people that aren't. Being on a flight for a couple of hours next to an animal who doesn't understand personal space necessarily or anything like that, or like you said, could have an accident. It's a safety concern and everything. It's a hard one to weigh up. So I would say better safe than sorry and say no.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a hard one to kind of balance.
Now, speaking of earlier, my day job, probably should address a couple of things that are happening this week.
Yes.
This is your last chance to get your tickets to the Australian Aviation Summit, which is happening this Thursday, the 14th of August at the Illumina at Martin Place in Sydney. It is going to be a fantastic event. We've got all sorts of special guests. We've got the CEO of Air Asia over in Malaysia, Air Asia X, I believe, Benjamin Ismail. I'll just double check that. But we've got him coming along for a fireside chat. We have got a variety of panels and so he's the CEO of Air Asia X, and he'll be speaking to us about the challenges of operating a low-cost carrier in the Air Pacific, particularly in these turbulent times.
Yep.
We've got panelists coming in to talk sustainability, to talk the future of aviation and the outlook in Australia. Excuse me, especially a year on from the white paper. We've got talks and panels on new technologies and securing supply chains. And it will be capped off by a keynote address from the maestro, as Adam Thorne puts it, Alan Joyce, the former CEO of Qantas. He will be there, and he will be delivering his view on his tenure at Qantas. I believe one of the first times that he will have spoken publicly since his departure from the top job in late 23. Yep. So it'll be a big day. Australian Aviation Summit. Google the Australian Aviation Summit 2025. You'll be able to get your tickets there. If you want tickets to the Australian Aviation Awards, which are on that same night, you can't get them. They're sold out.
Wow.
But it will be a big night, the night of nights for the Australian aviation sector. So many fantastic finalists across different categories, both groups and individual. And of course, at the end of the night, we have the Excellence Award, the pinnacle of achievement in Australia's aviation sector, with, of course, the exception of the Huey Award for Most Reliable Airline. It will be a fantastic night. If you have not got your tickets, then if you've got a friend who's going, maybe hit them up afterwards and see how it went. If they've won an award, maybe hit them up a couple of days afterwards once the hangover has worn off.
Yes, absolutely. There are always a few of those.
So we will now get into the news for this week. And we've had a couple of stories come out of an ACCC report released today, the latest domestic airline competition report. And the first thing that the ACCC has found is that domestic airline capacity is still below pre-COVID levels, despite demand now tracking back where it was before the pandemic.
Yep.
So total seats found by domestic airlines, major domestic airlines in June 25 were 2.8% lower than the same period in 2019, despite the passenger numbers now sort of approaching where they were at that time. And according to the ACCC, this is largely because of the loss of Tigerair. Tigerair, of course, being Virgin Australia's former low-cost arm.
Yep.
Now, Tigerair was shut down when Virgin went into voluntary administration in 2020. ACCC Commissioner Anna Breakey said that it significantly reduced the capacity for low-cost travel from the domestic market. She said, since then, the lack of growth in seat capacity to meet rising demand has likely meant consumers are paying more than they would have in a more competitive and better supplied market. And in June, this is not an insignificant number. In June 2019 alone, Tigerair flew 398,000 seats.
Yeah.
And this is a quantity that the other major airlines just have not made up yet. This is not even counting the 54,000 seats that Rex has dropped since 2019. So the ACCC says only some of the capacity vacated by Tigerair has been picked up by other airlines. The remaining low-cost carrier Jetstar has added the most capacity. It's upped its seats by 15.7% or 193,000 seats. Virgin has gone up 64,000 seats. Qantas has gone up 24,000 seats. But, to my kind of back of the napkin math, that's just maybe around half the capacity, a little over half the capacity that has been lost with the end of Tigerair and the drop in seats operated by Rex. So that's been part of what's been driving up airfares, because there is more demand than the aviation industry necessarily has room for. Exactly.
And this I saw as well. This is despite fuel costs going down as well.
Yeah.
So it's pretty alarming to see how high airfares have gotten. So and obviously, Tigerair being a budget airline, this was the go-to for Australians flying cheaply now. Because
it was them and Jetstar.
Yeah. There doesn't seem to be a kind of worthy replacement for Tigerair since. Is there kind of an opening for a new budget airline or anything like that? I don't know.
It's maybe the trouble is, if you want to start a new budget airline in Australia, you need a lot of planes. Because Qantas and Virgin, Jetstar is the big player in low cost, the only game in town in terms of low cost flying domestically in Australia. I mean, Virgin has sort of its hybrid model, but in terms of an LCC, like a dedicated low cost character, it's Jetstar or nothing.
Yeah.
And so Tigerair was buying Tigerair was Virgin's kind of attempt to take it to Jetstar in that way. And when it went down, suddenly, back in it took all the capacity out that Tigerair was operating. I mean, I think some of Tigerair's planes have been repainted in Virgin colours. Like a couple of A320s have gone to Vara, I think.
Yep.
But aside from that, it's not been the same since we lost Tigerair. We had Bonza come in, but Bonza only had a few planes and it lost them all. Yeah. And we had Rex come in, but Rex was not competing in the low cost space. Rex was trying to be sort of a full service carrier, and that fell over. As we are all aware, and so. What's left? Again, Jetstar or nothing. Did you fly Tigerair back when it was around?
I did when I was young. Yes, I did. I just remember the rhetoric always being that Tiger, you've got to hold the doors on while you're flying along. It's a bit risky, but never had any problems. I've done a lot of flying for music and stuff like that. Jetstar, constantly problems with delays and everything like that. And so how much does this kind of limitation of competition for Jetstar kind of lead to higher prices and things like delays not getting dealt with?
Well, yeah, it's kind of... If you're looking in the low cost space, again, there is only Jetstar.
Yeah.
But you also have Virgin. Virgin is the only major competitor that Qantas Group has at the moment.
Yeah.
And the only sort of competition that Jetstar can really kind of claim to have, because the other major domestic airline is Qantas, which is the same.
Yeah, exactly.
And so Virgin is playing in that kind of hybrid space, and it's found that niche, and the niche is working pretty well for it.
Yeah. Because it is typically quite a lot cheaper than Qantas is from experience, correct?
Yeah, generally speaking. We've also seen, now the ACCC has said that they're are new aircraft coming for Qantas and Virgin in the second half of 2025. Qantas has been testing its new A321XLR. The first one of those has arrived, and it's expecting to get that in operation in coming months. Virgin is getting its E190 E2s. They're going to start arriving.
And they're for regional travel?
They're for Vara,
Yeah.
so they're going to be operating out west, but they hopefully should be getting some more 737 MAX 8s as well.
Cool.
But the trouble is, these new and redeployed aircraft are going to be used to replace older aircraft or leased aircraft before considering significant expansions in capacity. So Qantas Group, it's shut down Jetstar Asia, and it's bringing in, some I think some A320s that Jetstar Asia was going to fly. And it's probably just going to, redo them in Jetstar Australia.
Sure.
Because saves paint, I guess.
Yeah.
But they're going to put them in Jetstar Australia, and that's going to sort of. There's 13 of those planes, and that's going to help a little. But again, all these new planes they're intended to phase out older ones eventually. They're not intended to really bolster capacity and put on more flights.
Yeah. I mean that is alarming. And even then, like you said, the capacity to make up is huge. It's what, like 150, 200,000 almost, maybe.
Fair bit, yeah.
Just rough maths, but there is a lot to make up. So, yeah, that's quite interesting. So, is there no real big move to address it at all?
At the moment, it doesn't appear so. I mean, the ACCC has pointed this out.
Yeah.
But in order to fly more routes, you need more planes,
Yeah.
and you need you need to see that the demand is there. I mean, the demand is there in general, but
Enough to warrant spending that much
enough
on
to
new aircraft?
enough to warrant spending a lot of money on new aircraft or pulling aircraft off of other routes, and
Yep.
because you only have so many planes to go around, and you need to have some planes on standby in case some other planes, have mechanical problems, and you got to fly something in.
Yeah.
So it's a tricky one.
Yeah,
It's a tricky
is.
one for the airlines, which is a shame because back last year before Rex and Bonz's jet operations went under, we did see data from the competition task force that showed that adding more competitors can basically halve airfares depending on how many. We saw 39.6 cents on average per kilometer on routes with only one carrier, 28.2 on routes with two carriers, 19.2 with three. So more competition drives down prices.
Yeah, of
and
course.
so it would be fantastic to get another national, domestic airline in the mix. But, so far, really there's only been kind of two rumblings about that since Bonza and Rex disappeared from the equation. And that's been Koala, who, as we said last week, we will believe it when we see it. And the other one is these guys, Renaissance Partners, who are looking to bring in, who they've been making noises about. They want to buy Rex and turn it into the regional arm for the new TAA.
Okay, right.
And they have a sort of more concrete plan, it sounds like, than Koala does, in that they have said what their plan is. But the new TAA is not going to be taking on Qantas and Virgin and Jetstar in the Golden Triangle. It's their whole thing is we want to turn Darwin into the new Dallas, and we want to be a feeder airline for other overseas airlines to come into Darwin and fly 4 hours to anywhere else in the country.
Right.
So it's a tough one, and we'll have to see how this shakes out.
How long has Koala Airlines kind of been teasing this kind of we're going to be
A while.
Yeah.
A while, and they've been, they've got renders of 737 MAX 8s and Koala Airlines livery all over their website.
Yep.
But so far we haven't seen much else out of them. They're saying that they want to launch next year, but with no planes, and again, it appears no valid air operator certificate that we can find.
Yeah.
We'll believe it when we see it.
Yeah, because that takes quite a while to get in itself. So.
Yeah, and that's we were talking with David last week. That was part of what happened with Bonza, because it took them a while to get their AOC.
It certainly
they were
did.
supposed to open and start flying well before that. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll have more of the week's news. All right, welcome back. This is the Australian Aviation Podcast, here with rotating guest Daniel Croft.
G'day.
Daniel, what frequent flyer programs do you belong to?
None. Actually, no. I'm part of Virgin's.
Velocity?
Yeah, Velocity, yeah. Purely because they're really, really good for musicians. If you're an APRA member, you can pay for standard checked baggage, and you can get 64 kilos worth of music gear carried domestically. It's fantastic.
Well, there you go. Good tip for musos.
Yeah. Become an APRA member. It's really easy to get guitars and drum gear on a plane.
I am a member of both Qantas Frequent Flyer and Velocity, though I generally tend to use Velocity a bit more because I have a Coles near my house, and it has Flybuys integration.
Yeah.
I probably, if you have a Woolies near your house, you're more likely to go with Qantas because that's the Everyday Rewards integration. But we've had also from this domestic airline competition report, the ACCC has taken a look at frequent flyer programs.
Right.
And they've said that consumers should consider the value they receive from these programs because both Qantas points and Velocity points have dropped in their buying power. So Qantas Frequent Flyer, as at December 2024, had around 17 million members, 12.9 million for Velocity. And both of these, so Qantas in this month and Velocity in sort of gradually since June 2023, have generally increased the number of points that you need to book certain flights. So starting classic reward fares for Qantas Frequent Flyer on Qantas flights have gone up 15%. From 8,000 to 9,200 points plus taxes, fees, and charges. Some have gone up by 20%. Now, at the same time, they have decreased the number of points you need to go on a Jetstar flight, so you can get Jetstar flights more cheaply. And the starting price for the lead-in price of starting Velocity reward fares went down from 6,200 to 5,900 points, but the price ceiling has gone up. So from 9,900 to 12,900 points. So there's been a bit of a shake-up in reward points. Now, we've contacted both Qantas and Velocity for comment. Qantas has said that these are the first changes to classic reward seats in 6 years, only the second since 2004. And they've also pointed out that they have boosted the points that you get from flying domestically by around 25%. So they're saying, this is an extra 4 billion reward points that are being handed out annually. We haven't heard back from Virgin yet, as at time of broadcasting. We'll have to keep an eye on that. But it is, we have had discussions about Velocity points earlier on the show. In previous episodes, is Velocity worth it? Is Qantas the better option? What's your take? Have you bought seats with points before?
No, I've never had enough. But what I'm kind of curious of is do you know how well existing customers are reacting to this change? Because obviously, if you've built up all these points and all these rates go up, you're in a bit of trouble.
Yeah, there's been a bit of chatter, I think, from people from both reward programs who are people. I think before this month, people were frantically trying to use their Qantas points to book seats before the devaluation happened.
Sure.
And there's been complaints about how Velocity points are now worth less than they were. I've been sort of checking because I've been looking. I go to Melbourne on points basically every year, though. Last year I didn't go to Melbourne on points. I paid for Melbourne out of my own pocket.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Paid for. Interestingly, I paid to fly down on Rex and back up on Virgin.
Okay.
And so I ended up flying down on Virgin and back up on Virgin.
Right.
But we sort of shelled out for that, and we actually used the points from those flights to go to Perth.
Okay, lovely.
Yeah, so that cost us between the two of us 70-something thousand points, which was a fair whack of points.
Yeah, it's a long flight from here.
But I'm going to be having to look at the prices on Virgin Reward seats and sort of weighing things up as well, because it's a tricky one.
So obviously, do you kind of believe there's been an overall loss of value even with this extra, what was it, 4 billion points you said?
That's for Qantas. I don't.
Oh, it is for Qantas. Okay,
That's for Qantas. Yeah, I don't tend to fly a lot on Qantas.
Neither.
Fly for business, because I think it's the company that we sort of use here at Momentum Media.
Yeah.
But I don't, fly much with Qantas for pleasure, because I live near a Coles. But it's I'll have to see how things shake out in terms of points going down to Melbourne with Velocity, because we've got, I think, 30-something thousand points, which should be enough to get us both down there and back. But we'll have to see.
Wow. Okay. Well, there you go.
So you've never booked any seats on points?
No, I've never had enough. Partially having not been part of points programs or frequent flyer programs, and then like you said, here we typically use Qantas, and I'm a Virgin guy, so that's great out of context.
Yeah. Hey, production, can we get that clipped out?
Yeah.
Maybe remix it.
Yeah. No. And I'm a Virgin flyer typically, so no, never quite had enough. I might be approaching a point where I can, and I might be needing to fly.
I mean, do you have your flybys hooked up to it?
I do not, but I am typically an Aldi shopper,
okay.
Which gives me nothing, unfortunately.
It does give you lower prices from what I hear.
It does. It gives me great lower prices, but in terms of my air travel, it gives me nothing.
Yeah. Well, there is also a Rex Flyer, but Rex Flyer doesn't have a partnership with anyone.
No. And when I used to be a Rex flyer, I used to love Rex, but I haven't flown on Rex in a while, and I've not got really any regional plans, so I probably won't be.
Well, Rex Flyer still is, I believe, the frequent flyer program that Rex implemented.
It is still around.
Yeah, it's still around from what I know. I've still got some points sitting around there.
Yep.
But they're not of much use to me at the moment.
No. Oh, well, that's a bit of a bummer. Seeing quite a few airlines kind of go into voluntary administration. I know we saw Virgin. We've now seen Bonza and Rex. It's a bit sad. There's definitely this kind of emotion in the Australian aviation industry. So it is quite upsetting.
Now, talking of choices of airlines and who flies with who, there was a Department of Finance review that came out the other week, because there's been all this kerfuffle and palaver about, does Qantas get too much of the government's business? Because I believe the policy at the moment is that you're supposed to take the lowest available fare, or the best price for the taxpayer if you're with the government and you're flying on official business.
Yep.
And there has been discussions, are people, flying too much with Qantas because they want to get the status credits, or because they, want the chairman's lounge or whatever, or what have you. So this review was initiated after the aviation white paper. It was completed in December, but they kind of held back the release.
Yep.
And it's finally been released. And what it actually found was that travel bookings by the government were roughly the same as those of the general public. So the government is not really favoring one airline or one airline group over the others. So most with Canberra, most of the bookings were with Qantas, but Qantas is the one that flies the most to Canberra.
Yeah.
So 85.6% of government flights from Adelaide to Canberra, or the Canberra and Adelaide sector, were with Qantas, but 84.9% of flights between Canberra and Adelaide are Qantas.
Yeah.
Canberra to Brisbane also consistent with publicly available flights. Now, there were some sectors where Qantas did get a bit more of a disproportionate share: Canberra to Melbourne, Canberra to Sydney, but these are most commonly used for international connections.
Yes.
So if you're connecting through, it's probably going to be on a Qantas flight.
Yes.
On the Golden Triangle, Melbourne, Brisbane, Sydney, it was actually less than the market share.
Wow. Okay.
So Qantas saw 39.1% of bookings for Melbourne to Brisbane and Sydney to Melbourne sectors, and 40.5% for Sydney to Brisbane. This is despite Qantas having 56.6% of Melbourne to Brisbane flights, 64.6% of Sydney-Brisbane flights, and 63.8% of Sydney-Melbourne flights. This is from the report. One common suggestion is that travellers use an airline with a large number of flights on the route to ensure they can change if business circumstances change. And, Qantas and Jetstar operate the most flights on these routes. But even still, there's less. Reliability is another factor. Availability of other flights. So, on high-frequency routes, reliability should be less of an operational consideration where the passenger can take a prior or subsequent flight with little impact on government. So basically, you don't need to take the most reliable airline if there's going to be another flight, before or after by an hour or two.
Sure.
And the policy setting on airline preferencing has been found to be fit for purpose. But the report said there may be instances where individual travellers are not adhering to the travel policy.
Sure, of course, though. That makes perfect sense that there's always going to be a couple.
Yeah. And so I think under the current policy as well, you cannot get frequent flyer points if you're a government official traveling with an airline, but you can get status credits. So I think there's a bit of a discussion as to whether that should change, because status credits are what, bump you up to the higher tiers of membership.
Yep.
What's your take on all this, Daniel? I know it's a lot of complicated numbers that I've been flinging at you.
No, well, look, actually, that surprises me quite a lot. I wouldn't have been surprised at all if there was a loyalty to the national carrier. But
and to the Chairman's Lounge.
Of course, yes. But it also makes sense that, when weighing up, like you said before, like the cheapest flights available, we just said that there's not really any competition for the budget airline. And availability. Every time we've done flights to Canberra, it's typically, from memory, it's all Qantas Dash 8s, or I think you can do Rex. But for me, it's pretty dominated by Jetstar, by Qantas. So it makes sense for sure that people are flying Qantas for government travel. In terms of frequent flyers, I think that's perfectly fair that they don't earn them. Especially if you're traveling all the time on a government dollar, and then you can use, it's like, but whenever I need to travel for myself, I've just got it paid for with my points. Yeah, that's a bit rough.
Yeah.
But I guess that's a reality of really any business that pays for flights for their staff.
I mean, we get frequent flyer points.
We do.
We do get frequent flyer points when we fly. But that's it hasn't really affected how much I fly with Qantas otherwise.
It also isn't taxpayer money.
It isn't taxpayer money as well. It's on the company dime.
It is.
Thanks, Momentum.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Sticking with Qantas for a moment, we've had last year there came out a review by Tom Saar, who was a business independent business advisor, who found that there had been, during the Alan Joyce era, during the time of the Maestro, who you will be able to hear from at the Australian Aviation Summit on Thursday, during the time of Alan Joyce, there was a bit too much deference to him. Like, he was a very dominant personality within the airline.
Very much top-down control.
Top-down, yeah. Command and control, I believe, was one description of the style. And what Tom Saar found was, and this is a quote from the report, top-down leadership with a dominant and trusted CEO, leading to insufficient listening and low speak-up. The report said that there was too much deference to a long-tenured CEO who had endured and overcome multiple past operational and financial crises. And this was defended by as being necessary during COVID-19. But the trouble was, according to the chairs of Qantas, I think Richard Goyder and John Mullen, this continued after COVID-19 when it was maybe no longer necessary.
Yeah.
And so it was to the detriment of the airline. Now, John Mullen, the new chair of Qantas, spoke to The Australian, and he said that Qantas has religiously followed through on all of the recommendations in the report. There were 32 recommendations. He said that they've had the actions audited by independent auditors to make sure that they're not kidding themselves, that they haven't done anything done things that they haven't.
Yep.
And he says that the change has brought a much stronger focus on the customer. He also said, quote, "I don't think there are any big egos around the board table anymore, and there are no big egos in management, both of which can be really corrosive, I find, in a business."
Yep.
So we have seen, a few prominent Joyce era figures exit in the past few years. Ex-chair Richard Goyder is gone. Todd Sampson, the advertising guru, has gone.
Yep.
And they're looking to replace people on the board. But yeah, that whole thing about big egos and I guess too much command and control, too much yes sir, Mr. Joyce, sir. What's your take on that?
I mean, look, it sounds like, obviously, as he said, it makes sense in a time of real dire straits, because that obviously the Australian aviation industry really did suffer during that COVID pandemic. But just even seeing the fact that there was a bit of a reshuffle of the board following his departure, I don't know, is that some of that loyalty still sticking around? But I mean, a reshuffle, to me, because Vanessa Hudson, she's the CEO now.
She is,
and
she's been doing a fine job. It's people have been saying, oh, she's just a protege, she's just Alan Joyce 2.0, right? Because she was the CFO under Alan Joyce.
Yeah, sure.
But from what we've kind of observed here, she's kind of been really just quietly getting on with the job. She's not getting out and fronting the cameras. She's not, doing big speeches or anything like that.
Yeah.
She's really just kind of putting her head down and working behind the scenes. And they're two very kind of different leadership styles. Alan Joyce was never backward and coming forward.
Yeah.
He was constantly in front of the cameras, constantly talking about what Qantas was doing and this and that. And Vanessa Hudson has been, I guess, a bit more reticent.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't work at Qantas, so I don't know what her leadership style is. But
sure.
It looks like she's been doing pretty well.
It seems like there really is an interest of restoring kind of reputation. Because I know, when I was a child, Qantas had this fantastic reputation and people were celebrating traveling on the national carrier and, why would I fly anything else? Qantas is reliable, blah, 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 blah. And now most of the rhetoric that I hear regarding Qantas is overpriced and not reliable.
Yeah.
So I guess improving that kind of reputation and kind of returning Qantas back to its former glory seems to be a kind of a bit of a focus as far as I've seen. So this kind of customer focus makes sense. That's fantastic.
Well, we're going to go for one more quick break, but when we come back, we'll have a little bit more of the week's news. All right, welcome back to the Australian Aviation Podcast. Now, we're going to stay with Qantas for a bit because there's been a fair bit of Qantas news over the past week. It is the end of an era for the Qantas Link Q300s, which flew off into the sunset after 25 years in service last Friday. So the Q300s are sort of the short. Qantas has moved to an all Q400 fleet.
Yep.
For its Qantas Link turboprop operations. The Q400s are longer. I think more efficient.
Higher
capacity. Newer generally than the ones that they are replacing. They've brought in these sort of midlife Q400s. And the Q200s and the Q300s have, I think, mostly gone to this Canadian aircraft leasing company called Avmax.
Yep.
And some of those are now going to be used by formerly Skytrans, now SmartLynx, to operate the Lord Howe Island route, taking over from Qantas Link because Q400s are too big to land at Lord Howe Island.
Wow.
You've got to use two Q200s.
That is insane.
But the final Q300 flight for Qantas Link was QF 2003 from Tamworth to Sydney. This was VHSBV. And I think this one plane has flown 39,000 flights over its lifetime, more than 1.2 million passengers, which is impressive for a little. What is it? A 50-seater turboprop.
Yeah, that's incredible.
And so Qantas has operated the Q100, the Q200, Q300, and Q400 over the last 34 years. The Q300s have been with Qantas since Sun State Airlines in 2000. And so now the Q300s are off to new adventures.
Yeah. And so I've seen as well, one of the main reasons for moving towards this entirely, Q400 offering was reliability and cost. I think you wrote.
So that's part of it. I mean, they are newer planes, so they will be generally more reliable than older planes.
Yep.
Probably sort of with turboprops, maybe a bit more cost efficient to be operating, same flight but with more people.
Yeah, sure.
I think they're getting there's going to be fewer Q400s than they were the total Dash 8 fleet.
Yep.
But they will be carrying more people.
Yeah, was it on this that they were replacing, I think, was it, 19 Q200s and Q300s with 14 Q400s.
Yeah, exactly.
But again, obviously you have the increased capacity. And you've never flown on a Dash 8?
I don't recall having flown on a Dash 8. I may have done when I was a lot younger, to, I don't know, Hamilton Island or something. I sort of vague and distant memories that could have been anything. But I don't believe I've been on a Q400. They usually fly those down to Canberra, don't they?
Yeah, so I'm not sure if I was on a Q300 or a Q400. But yeah, I've flown on a few of them on our trips to Canberra. And they scare a lot of people because they're loud and they're small. Well, obviously compared to, what you might use for a flight to Melbourne, like a 737 or something like that. But I love them. I think they're fantastic. If you're sitting by the window and you can see the prop and everything to your left or right,
no, it's still there.
Sitting. Yeah, it's you're all there. The only thing it's not great for is if you want to look at the view, because they kind of get in the way. But no, I love them. I think they're fantastic.
Have you flown? Because the only other alternative in Australia is the old Saab, the 340B.
Mm-hmm.
Have you flown on any of those with Rex or Link or any of those?
I believe I have, but the experience was just pretty typical of any domestic flight, really. Those Dash 8s really stand out. But no, I not from memory, but maybe, unsure.
Well, yes, end of an era for the Q300s, and the Q400s are on average, according to Vanessa Hudson, 10 years younger than the aircraft that they're replacing. These new midlife ones, 30% faster, less carbon emissions per passenger. The total Q400 fleet is going to be 45.
Okay.
So each is going to have 78 seats. That's and these are the new midlife Q400s that are coming in. These ones are having 78 seats. The previous Q400s, the existing ones, 74, 50 on the Q300s, 36 on the Q200s. Rachel Yangoyan, CEO of QantasLink, says that they'll improve reliability, reduce emissions per seat, and help us keep serving regional Australia for decades to come. And I think Qantas is looking probably, when they become available, to start looking at hydrogen and battery-powered planes to be replacing these Q400s when the time comes. Yeah,
that was something that actually really, really interested me hearing about, because obviously, I've not been riding in I wasn't riding in the aviation space for very long when I did. And then I obviously moved on quite quickly. I actually didn't realize that Virgin was already using was it the E190s? Are they?
So Virgin uses the E190. The E190 E2s are what Virgin is getting in.
Yep.
For the for the Western operations.
Yeah, for Vara. Yep.
So that's they're getting in the E190 E2s. Virgin Regional's main fleet right now is Fokkers.
Yep.
So they're replacing the old Fokkers with new Embraers. Yes, I will keep making that joke. Alliance flies a lot of E190s, and a lot of the time, if you're on a QantasLink jet, it's going to be an E190 if it's operated by Alliance. They're getting the A220s in as well.
Yep.
So E190s, A220s would be mainly the QantasLink. And Virgin's getting the E190 E2s. By the way, first one believed to be touching down in Australia next month to start operations in October.
Wow. How exciting. The future is now.
The future is indeed now. And there have been some developments with hydrogen and battery sort of aircraft. I think hydrogen especially. You've got, people like Stralis are taking, big leaps and bounds, doing powertrain testing and things like that, ready to actually do proper flights with hydrogen-powered planes. So they are coming. And it will be interesting to sort of see how well they literally and figuratively take off.
I mean, that would be really, really cool. Like, obviously, we've seen hydrogen power in the automotive industry. I don't think proved to be as effective, and this is largely because, if you're driving a car, you need petrol stations regularly, and having hydrogen fuel cell stations everywhere after just, all this new infrastructure in electric cars, that's one of the key issues. But in terms of the kind of aviation industry, hydrogen, that's how they work, using hydrogen fuel cells for power. Is that kind of generally the gist?
It's generating power with these fuel cells.
Yeah, that seems to be a much more realistic use case for hydrogen power. That's really, really cool, actually, to hear. I'm excited for that.
We've also had, speaking of small planes, a survey released by Navigating Aviation. Longtime friend of Australian Aviation, Angela Garvey, is sort of the spearhead of Navigating Aviation. And it's kind of an alarming picture. Now, so general aviation, things like charter flights, flight instruction, crop dusting, aerial surveillance, all of those sort of things, and those little light planes like the Cessnas and the Pipers and all of that.
Yep.
According to this survey, which is the first National General Aviation Culture and Wellbeing Survey, surveyed, I think, somewhere north of 400, 411 people, including both current and former GA workers. 76% of current GA workers are concerned about mental health issues in the industry. 59% believe there is a culture of silence that prevents them from speaking up. More than half say that the industry has had a negative effect on their mental health, and 70% are worried that seeking help would impact their careers. Because it would be a stressful experience working in like a small company with small planes, maybe older planes. Everyone knows everyone, but there's a lot more room for perhaps a bad culture to set in if it's just a few people.
And that's like a cross-industry thing too. You see it observed in all sorts of industries when you have a really, really small business, maybe a kind of HR-y kind of person or department that's, less impactful because everyone is generally just buddies. And then, like you said,
or doesn't have an HR division at all.
Well, that is where HR is the CEO or something like that. Purely for the title.
We've all sort of experienced something like that.
We have, yes. And like you said, combined with working on, complicated aircraft or with or complicated aircraft. I mean, complicated to an individual, not compared to commercial aircraft. Tensions build, and it's very easy to, I guess, feel trapped.
Yeah, and and as Angela Garvey has pointed out as well, this is not just people think of general aviation as like this little sort of the little brother of like commercial pilots and stuff like that, and commercial airlines, but it's really, really important. So many people starting their aviation careers start out in general aviation. I mean, Captain Michelle Huntington, whose book is over on the shelf there and will be appearing in a recently recorded episode of the podcast, as mentioned at the start of the show. She got her start in general aviation. She was operating charter flights, she was doing flight instructions, all of that in like a small business. And she I don't believe that she had problems with the culture at the businesses that she worked at, generally speaking, but there are so many people who begin their careers in GA, flight training, engineering, maintenance, operations, management, or so many of these people begin in GA before going into more senior positions, including the airlines.
Yeah.
And so Angela Garvey says, quote, historically, mental health and well-being initiatives in aviation have been driven from the top down, with much of the focus placed on the airline sector. This has often meant the needs of GA have been overlooked, despite its pivotal role as the foundation of the industry and the starting point for many aviation careers. So it really does need to be addressed, I think, if things are this bad, and particularly as well, younger workers are really feeling the squeeze. On average, they've felt stressed 57% of the time over the past 12 months, compared to 35% of the time for workers aged 40 and over. And, as the report says, given the projected shortfalls in aviation workers over coming years, it's imperative that those young people who do choose an aviation career are appropriately looked after and supported during their formative years in the sector. While business owners or managers may consider treating younger staff in the same manner they were treated when they were entering the sector a generation or longer ago, there is a need to ensure an awareness and understanding of the needs and expectations of these younger industry entrants. And, it's kind of like, we had to go through hell when, we were coming through the industry, this will toughen them up. This will, give them a thicker skin. But what was it? The same water that, the same pressure that might harden someone up and make them tougher will completely break someone else.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's, the same water that hardens the egg will soften the potato, I believe is another expression that I've heard.
That's fantastic.
And, it's easy to say, oh, well, they should, take a stiff upper lip and learn to toughen up. But if people are crashing out of the industry because of, toxic workplace cultures, where are all the new workers going to come from?
Exactly, yeah. It's a really, really great way. If you're shooting your source of staff, that's it. You're cutting it off. So that seems quite fundamental. We had a similar kind of issue in the cyber industry. Not so much, kind of related to HR and everything, but people were dropping like flies because of burnout. And it's a spirally thing in the same sense that this is, where if these cultures build and build and build and build, you're going to increase the number of people leaving. The number of people joining obviously is going to diminish. And it was the same thing we saw in cyber. And it leads to massive, massive, massive staff shortages, which get very real and very problematic. And, that means less staff in, people get even more stressed, people leave. It's an absolute cycle. And I think it is very, 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 very important to jump on quickly.
Yeah, this is GA is where careers in aviation start.
Yeah.
And if people get a horrible bad taste for aviation early on, they're not going to want to continue. They're going to want to go and do something else.
I mean, especially because it's an industry...
And with talent shortages the way they are.
Yeah, and especially it's an industry that's it's an expensive one to get into.
You need to pay for your own flying lessons.
Yep. Yeah, it's a hard one to get into because it's, considering the price, it's got, people are interested in doing it, but it's difficult to get to that level. And then, to turn people away, you're going to turn away talent and just numbers in general. It seems... Yeah, so a culture change obviously is very difficult, but it's something that obviously needs to happen.
Now, speaking of people shooting themselves in the foot and cultural changes needed, we've got time for one more thing, and this is just something that's come across our... you've seen this.
I did, yeah.
So this was over in America, and it sort of demonstrates the value of considering safety and listening to cabin crews.
Absolutely.
We had a fella, a professional pickleball coach. I
did not know that.
Yeah, apparently professional pickleball coach. But said he posted on social media. He said, on August 4th, 2025, something happened to me that I never imagined I have to go through, especially on a commercial airline. While flying on American Airlines Flight 2860, my privacy and dignity were violated in ways that left me shaken, humiliated, and hurt. I'm sharing this because I believe no passenger should ever go through this. And he's taken the matter to the American Airlines legal department. He says, I will fight for justice, privacy, and dignity for every passenger. He got caught vaping in the toilet.
Yeah. Yeah, and he was not, called out. They were not rude to him initially. He came out firing on all cylinders.
It's like, they barged into the bathroom while he was in there because presumably the smoke alarm was going off. And, you could maybe, I don't know if they could see vape vapor.
Yeah.
What do you call the stuff that comes out of a vape?
I would say just vapor.
Yeah, they could see vapor vaping out of the bathroom maybe. And so it's like, well, if someone's smoking or vaping in the bathroom, they've got to make sure that the plane's not on fire.
Yeah, because, don't get me wrong, vape in the bathroom's bad, fire's worse. You've got to kind of clarify that.
Yeah, and so, they've come barging into the bathroom, and, fair enough, you'll get a little bit shocked if someone kicks the door into the airplane bathroom when you're in there, right? Or if someone, forces the door open. But he's sort of come out. He started recording, and he's saying, you're violating my privacy. Get out, and saying, stop vaping.
Yeah. The best line of the whole thing is when for me anyway, is when he goes, my friend's a lawyer. I'm a lawyer. It's like, wait, actually, no, I'm a lawyer as well.
Yeah.
Never mind. And it was like, you got nothing to stand on, buddy. And like, if you look at the comments on those videos as well, because it's been uploaded and reposted a few times, I think, no one is sympathetic. Like,
Yeah.
you know, lots of people like me who smoke or vape, no sympathy. That is just not something you do. You do not put your habit on someone else, particularly when it is just illegal on an aircraft. Is it like a federal crime?
It's a federal offense in America. And
Yeah.
I think it's also like a major offense here in Australia. And, you know, he's coming out and, like, you know, the flight attendant tries to grab his phone because he's recording, and, you know, he's accusing her of assaulting him, and he's like going down the aisle filming and saying, you know, she's assaulted me. And and he's saying, I'm going to put this on the internet. And it's like, you know, mate, it's... You know, your privacy and dignity have been violated. This is on you. This is all on you, buddy.
Yeah. And it's pretty well known that, like, to get caught doing something like that, which very easy to, you're in a confined tube in the sky, you can face massive penalties. I think in Australia it's 50 penalty units, which equates to like tens of thousands of dollars if there are no other kind of penalties as well. Like, I don't know if it comes to imprisonment or whatever it is, but 13,750 according to an AFP report from 2023.
Yeah, it's and you know, he's gone out and he said, "Oh, look, I was going through nicotine withdrawal. You know, I'm autistic and there was sensory overload." And it's like, okay, sure, you're having sensory overload and nicotine withdrawal, fine. Don't use like I'm autistic as an excuse for what you did.
No, that is a complete cop out. Also, nicotine withdrawal, you can get nicotine patches. You can have, I don't know if they're even legal in Australia, but I've heard of them, the Zins, the little nicotine pouches.
Yeah, I'm not sure. And there's gum. You know,
yeah.
Like, if you know
Plenty
you're going
of
to be on if you know
alternatives.
you're going to be on the flight and you're going to, you know, need to light up, get some patches.
Yeah, it's really not that hard. I went on tour a few years ago, and we had a flight from Sydney to Munich. We had a stopover in Vietnam, and I did not smoke or anything then, but my bass player did. Zero issues. Not even like, and he'd been a smoker for, you know, a number of years. Zero issues. And he's not the only one. You go to the smoking area outside an airport or in one of those smoking rooms in an international airport, there's usually quite a few people there, but you don't usually hear people doing it. It's really not, if you're that addicted, it's a really big problem.
And look, flight attendants, you know, you think of flight attendants, most people think of flight attendants as just like the people who bring the coffee and the people who bring the in-flight meals, right? But the biggest responsibility of a flight attendant is safety.
Yes. They're the crew that are getting you off the flight in an emergency.
Yeah, exactly.
They're staying back to make sure everyone else gets off.
Yeah, you know, it's you know, you can say, oh, you can't treat me like this, I'm a passenger. If you're a safety hazard, yes, they can.
Yeah, they absolutely can.
You know, they are there to make sure that everyone gets from point A to point B in as much safety and comfort as possible. And if you're vaping in the toilets and, you know, making people think that the plane might be on fire, you are the problem.
Just the idea that is the high horse he decides to stand on. They opened the bathroom door because I was vaping in the bathroom.
Yeah, and they you know, she put her hands on me to try and grab the phone. It's like, dude, just cop to it, man.
Yeah.
Just, you were vaping in the bathroom. Don't vape in the bathroom, and listen to the flight attendants when they tell. I'm so mad that I've crashed this A380 here. You were vaping in the bathroom, and you were telling and you were getting, you know, shirty at the flight attendants who are telling you not to vape in the bathroom. Just pull your head in.
The vape smoke has blinded the pilot of this lovely A380,
Yeah, exactly.
and he's crashed into the table.
Yeah, it's a terrible tragedy. So many tiny people lost. Well, look, that's about all the time we have for this episode of the Australian Aviation Podcast. Thank you to this week's competitor on Who Wants to Be Adam Thorne, Daniel Croft.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it was cool going back down memory lane with Australian aviation. Obviously, your knowledge on the topic far is far above mine. My knowledge of English is going as well. So, no, thank you very much. This was good fun.
Well, we shall see if we shall see you again, because we still have a few more contestants to go on Who Wants to Be Adam Thorne, our Game of Thorns. And so look forward to more rotating guest Adams in the coming weeks. And if you are in Sydney on Thursday, last chance to get your tickets for the Australian Aviation Summit. In the meantime, thank you very much. I am Jake. Thank you. I'm Jake Nelson. Thank you to my guest co-host, Daniel Croft.
Thank you very much.
And we shall see you next time.